And we are now live.
So this is Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing our work on the many bills that have been referred to us. The bill that we're going to take up next is H 546. It's on racial justice statistics. And we have Senator White here, who is the reporter of the bill from Government Operations.
Yep. Actually, it's from Judiciary.
Oh, I'm sorry.
546 came out of Judiciary.
Sorry. Here from Judiciary. I'm sorry. Committee on Judiciary. You have too many roles, Senator White. So actually, we have we have 4 members of Judiciary in this room. So I guess the rest of us should just say it must be great.
Oh, I thought that's what you were going to say.
Okay. So
Get Senator Benning over from the other room.
so what we have here
We
is.
don't want to match their job.
So the executive director of racial equity will oversee a division of statistics.
Yeah, and I will tell you, when this came over from the House, it was a very complicated setup, and it had an entirely a panel made that was outside of state government. We couldn't quite figure out where it lived or what it was, and we felt that it was necessary to. It went through a couple iterations. So GovOps did look at it, and we moved it to RDAP, because RDAP is where and I don't remember the name for RDAP, but it's the law enforcement group, or it's the group that's looking at racial inequities in our criminal justice system. And so GovOps put it there, and there was a huge outcry that they didn't have enough staff and enough resources to do it, and we agreed with them. So in Judiciary, we moved it back, so it now is a division under the Office of Racial Equity. And this panel will be helping the office. There is, I believe, 3 people, is it?
Yeah.
There's 1 full-time exempt division leader,
Yeah.
and the others 2 full-time exempt information technology data.
Yeah, so they really are the information technology people, and this panel then will be helping to advise them on what the statistics are, what data needs to be gathered, how to work with different communities around the data that needs to be collected. And then there will be a relationship with RDAP in terms of sending a report back to them, so that RDAP keeps on top of the work of this group, of this division.
So the appropriations consist of what we set aside. I see that there's 363 the fund for the division, 3,360 for per diems.
Yeah.
And then a little more than $500,000 for digital services for the system.
I believe that is correct, right?
Yeah.
Getting to it very quickly.
It's what?
She's just confirming the appropriations relative to what we were
set aside.
Yeah.
And that's 4 or 5. Which one is it? 520?
It's 546.
546.
546.
And that,
I don't think the Judiciary Committee changed the appropriations from the House version.
Okay.
no,
And the vote in judiciary was probably 5-0, or?
I think, yeah.
Yes. I might add that this is part of the justice reinvestment too.
And even though it's, GovOps didn't officially have it, we did review it and made suggestions, and the support there was the entire committee.
So, other questions of the chair? Otherwise, as I said, we have 4 members of judiciary here, 1 remote. If there's not further questions on the part of those who, yes, Senator Ruth.
I would move the bill favor.
Okay, so second by Senator Starr. So a motion has been made and seconded to move the bill favorably. And if there's not further discussion,
It's the same. It looks like there's a couple of $1,000, $4,000 or $5,000 less in this Senate version than there is in the House version.
well,
Oh,
sorry.
we didn't make any changes.
You didn't?
No.
I'll double check with Sarah, it just seems like a slightly high number that the
Okay.
town.
At least it's in the ballpark.
Yes, yeah.
So, unless there's further discussion, we'll call the roll.
Senator Fallon, Senator Peru, yes. Senator Nick,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Starr. Yes. Senator Westman. Senator Mitchell.
Yes.
I interpreted that.
So, it's a report from judiciary.
Yeah, that's me.
And I'm
No,
happy to do it.
no.
Oh, with the report from here for judiciary.
Senator Bruce will be happy to do that. Okay, thank you. I'm talking about the report.
Yeah, got it.
Now we're going to move on to H410, and that is the oversight of artificial intelligence.
Thank you, sir.
I hope we have a.
Thank you, sir.
All those algorithms.
And we're all out of intelligence too.
We're safe because Elon Musk.
Thank you.
Okay, so the reason that we have this is it creates another position, an exempt position. In digital services, is that?
And there's an advisory council as well. that has-
And did the House set aside, they've included this, have we included this?
This is not in the general fund, this would be through the internal service fund structure.
Actually, we took that out.
Okay.
They, if you want,
Okay, so,
the way ADS testified to us is that it would be really difficult for them to take it through the universal, is that what it's called, universal service fund?
Yeah.
So instead, if you can see on page 16, the last line says the position will be funded from existing resources within the agency. And they testified that they had just lost an exempt position and they were hoping to reinstate that exempt position. So they testified that it would just come out of their existing resources for the position.
so
We're not taking it out of the universal services fund.
So we got it because of the underlying bill?
are you talking about pool? When you talk about universal service funds, that has to do with,
Universal service fund is how they fund themselves, the ADS, by charging, just like BGS.
internal,
Uh-huh.
the internally, I'm back, universal service fund. is
Oh, okay,
on-
internal services fund.
Yeah.
It's how they charge all the agencies. And they believe that they can, fund this position within their existing resources, that they don't need to increase
They'll
the.
just-
Yeah, so it's actually not increasing the count of
Right.
positions, and they're doing it from within
Yeah.
their pool of resources.
Exactly.
So,
And then there is an advisory council though.
well, let me ask then, the establishment of a permanent exempt position is authorized, they actually have it then.
Yeah,
They
it's
have,
transferred and converted from existing vacant positions.
and when it came over from the House, it was, a permanent, a position from the classified pool. And they felt very strongly that this needs to be an exempt position, that it can't, and they did just have one, they just lost one and they're just asking to put it back.
All right.
That's what we heard.
So in other words,
It
you don't
should,
need to create a position, and because it's simply one transfer and convert it.
Yeah, so it's being created within ADS as an exempt position, but it's not increasing the total, it's coming over from
yes.
the pool of exempt.
All right,
What is this person, what are they gonna be doing?
They're gonna be looking at artificial intelligence. I have to say, I didn't even know what artificial intelligence
Oh, me
was. And it's used all the time in every single thing we do. And what the problem is right now is that we have no kind of policy about how it should be used in state government, what the code of ethics should be around it, what the parameters should be. And I'll give you one example that Justice Dooley gave us.
he was on the task.
He was on the task force, and this came out of the task force. A patient there are different kinds of artificial intelligence. Some of them just are there to direct you, like when you order a rug online and then suddenly you get ads for every rug in the world. That's just kind of, they don't make any decisions. But then there are some that make some level of decision, but then require human intervention to make the final decision. But then there are some that actually make decisions. And the example that he gave us was a patient went in and to look at something on his skin, and the artificial intelligence looked at it, said, and came back that it wasn't cancerous and that it was just okay. A few months later, and that was an intelligence that was used without a human intervention, and a few months later, turns out the guy did have cancer. So we need to have some standards around when AI is used to make decisions. It's very important around determining whether someone qualifies for Medicaid or food stamps or choices for care. All of that is fed in and then decisions are made. And so what this does is sets up this advisory council. It sets up a division within ADS around artificial intelligence. And the secretary felt strongly that it needed to be a division within instead of the way the bill came to us, it was a commission outside of, again, another commission outside of state
They're all the
government.
rage these days.
They are, and we said, no, it needs to be a
Just part
regular,
of doing work.
yes, and then this advisory council will look at, there's a whole list of issues here they look at. And the advisory council is, I believe, set to sunset in 2027. So 5 years, and then it'll sunset, and then if they still need it, then it'll come back.
Yeah, June 30th of 2027. Yes.
So if it sounded like some machine told this person that they didn't have cancer, and that's why it's called an
Well,
artificial intelligence?
It's people feed in information into systems, and then decisions are made based on the information that's fed in. Believe me, I don't understand it at all because I'm such a Luddite, but it is used in every single thing we do.
It could very well be algorithms that determine.
That's the word.
That would determine, for example, if you were trying to get health insurance and you'd feed in this information, it basically would say you're a high risk for coverage, and it could make a decision in terms of how you get assigned. In Vermont, we're community rated, but in other states, oftentimes you're risk rated. So just like with the cancer, it's it's feeding a lot of data in terms of maybe what that, the attributes of whatever that lesion might be, and taking that and processing it to render a diagnosis. So it's all around us now,
All everywhere.
from
So
everything.
how is that going to affect the lives of the people
Well,
we represent
That's exactly what
in a
this.
positive way?
Well, that's exactly what this is looking at, is how do we use artificial intelligence in our state systems to actually promote the quality of life for people instead of intruding on their privacy or anything else. And one of the problems with artificial intelligence, for example, is face recognition. And face recognition is very, very poorly designed and used on people of color, because it uses certain points to define, and the people who set up the systems are all white males, middle-aged, and so that's who it recognizes more. But this advisory council really needs to look at all the issues, and it's just limited to state government. This isn't going out into the general world in Vermont. It's just how state government uses artificial intelligence. And I'm sorry, Senator Baruth, you had
I did. I was thinking of self-driving cars. So right now, we don't have a setup for self-driving cars here, but very quickly, Tesla and other companies are going to be petitioning us And so they have two modes. One is you can be in the driver's seat, watching the road, and just like with cruise control, you can give some autonomy to the car, but you can grab the wheel and you can do whatever. But then they have a full automatic mode that they're not allowed to use anywhere yet, but they're designing it. And in that, theoretically, you can be in the backseat, stretched out while the car is driving. And so these decisions are gonna have to be made. And so who's gonna make them for us? So I think this is forward-looking. It could be software that's, regarding people's eligibility for Medicaid. Or it could be self-driving cars, or it could be drones and how that.
Or it could
information
be who gets the transplant,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
example.
or even something as simple as who gets food stamps. I mean,
Yeah,
it is, and there are many, many uses for it, and when we first got this, I thought, oh, man, I don't even want to deal with this, but the more we've heard from people, and we heard from people on it, Justice Dooley was with us all the time, and he was on the task force, and he is really.
They went all around the state. They actually had a meeting at Linden State College.
They've had, I think, 6 or 7 meetings around the state, and they were surprised at the number of residents and people that came to their meetings.
Who are the people who have intelligence to do this? Are these software people who would be hired to do this?
Yes, they're writing these algorithms all the
But I
time.
mean, people will be hired who are software.
with expertise.
Well, the 3 people that are, the one person that's would be some kind of a software.
Yeah.
Or
Where are we
assuming
gonna find them?
he or she would have regular intelligence and not artificial intelligence.
Well, I'm
But
gonna,
anyway,
so,
Some intelligence.
so we don't need an appropriation here. We're creating the position, but adding on a new one. It's simply, transferring from an existing, and, if there's not further discussion, because we've got 2 more bills,
Okay.
to go to.
sorry, Dave.
No, it's fine. Senator Starr makes a motion to move the bill. Second? Somebody want a second?
I will.
Oh, well, I got lots of them, so Bill, you write in whoever you want.
Okay.
And unless there's further discussion, call the roll.
Senator Ballin. Senator Faruqi. Yes. Senator Nika.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Weston.
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes. What are the other bills that?
We were gonna do 279 and 728.
I don't think they involve me, do they?
No, the only other one that came out of your committee, and we may take up is H96, and that's Senator Ron Pensfield's reporter, and that's the Truth and Reconciliation.
And that it's a lot of money.
I know, and you said you'd really worked hard to look at it, and
We did, and it's a commission that exists for 4 years. We felt that maybe we could move it down, not for 4 years, but for maybe 2 years. It is only funded for 1 year, or for the half a year. And whether it continues to exist will depending on funding going forth. I think it is a little bit weird to think about hiring a couple people and telling them you're there for half a year and then your job depends on future funding, but that is the way it's written, and we chose not to put aside money for the next 3 years for the funding.
well, some of it may be contingent on the findings and the information that data that's gathered in that first phase.
And it is a very complicated, this is a separate commission that's set up, and it's, we took a ton of testimony on the structure of it and how it comes into existence, and anyway, there it is.
That should wait.
Whose part of the budget is intelligence?
ADS, who does,
General government.
general government, who's general? I don't know.
I'm not smart enough to read.
Oh,
Bobby has all the
Might be back up.
intelligence.
I can do it.
okay, why don't
No, I
you do it?
don't.
Okay, all right.
Senator Ruth will do it because he rates high on the intelligence.
Yeah, but it's not artificial.
So, I guess Senator Rollins will come in at some point and talk to you about that.
No, we're going to get Senator Hardy and she's next, so thank you.
Okay.
And once we get some language on the boards and commissions.
Yeah, that would be great.
Aaron's working on it.
Okay.
That would be great.
I did explain to Jeanette that we were
Yeah,
trying to do midterm flexibility. so
yeah, and
that-
I think that's a very good idea, so, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll tell you, that chair is better than the little
Other one.
chairs like that.
Oh, I know, they're down so low. I know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator White. Appreciate being available so quickly.
So 728 is opioid overdose response.
Thank you, Senator White. Sure. Which bills are we doing? I'll get you copies too.
Page 728 is the opioid overdose response services.
Right, okay.
That's our first one. And then after that is 279, which is miscellaneous changes affecting the duties of DIVA.
Diva, okay. So the first one, my understanding was that there was, when the House passed this bill, there was $880,000 in it. And Stephanie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you know all this. And thank you. And when by the time we got to the bill in Senate Health and Welfare, you had already made decisions in this room about that money. And I believe there was 100,000 that was left in the budget, or 120,000 or something like that, that was left in the budget. You heard testimony from Department of Health, and we heard the same testimony that they had federal dollars to cover most of the expenses that had been previously sort of laid out in the House bill. So
We like to use federal money.
right, so I think there was like $780,000 of federal money. Most of it, they had federal money to cover most of it. Some of it is.
Senator Hardy, it reminds me, it seems like it would be really good to get a list because the health department keeps getting more money for treatment and it's hard to remember how much of it has come in and recent grants, I think several within maybe the last couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, it sounded like it was fairly recent between the time the House put together the budget and the time you and we got this bill and you did the budget. So we changed the sections that had been appropriation sections to just have them come back to us and sort of report on how they use the money. So you'll see that in section 9, 10, and 11, I believe, that we asked them to come in and just talk to us about what they did.
So they're creating a new overdose prevention
So
working group.
in the House version of the bill, they had already done this working group. We got testimony in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee that said, look, we've already done a number of these groups, working groups and studies about overdose prevention sites. And the conclusion by most people is that they are effective. They're not without controversy, but they are effective. And we got testimony from the health department saying that they were willing to do anything that they felt that had been deemed effective, because the opioid crisis is so deadly right now. More people died last year than any other year on record, and it's just, it's beyond crisis. And so but we heard from the atmosphere that going straight to a prevention site might not be feasible, that there would be opposition
Are you
to it.
talking about a safe site injection?
Safe injection sites, yeah, and they call them safe overdose prevention sites is apparently the term that's used now.
They've been
But
around
yes,
for a while.
They have, and they are successful in Canada and Europe. There's now one in New York City that's very successful, I think Philadelphia maybe. So there are a lot of places for them. And apparently, later this spring, I think May 15th is the date, the feds are coming out with some announcement
that would probably help the legal ability for safe injection sites to work. So we played around with maybe putting in some contingent language on if on May 15th, the feds decide X, then we would do this. But we didn't go there, even though I will be frank, I wanted to. I thought we should just go right to trying to do this because it's an effective mechanism for helping a harm reduction way of helping people who are struggling with substance use. So, but what we did instead, and if you want to change it to go right to a safe injection site, I'm all for it. But what we did instead was to make the working group a little bit more action oriented and have them come up with, you'll see on page 7, an actionable plan. And that they were to look at the findings from previously completed reports on this topic. What we didn't want them to do is just sort of plow treaded ground or whatever the saying is. You would probably know that, Chair. That's all.
Replow.
Yeah, replow. Anyway, so we tried to make it more action oriented. We also changed the date. The original bill from the House had them coming back to report to the legislature in December of 2023. That seemed like a really long time to us, so we changed it to January of 2023 so that we could maybe do something next session. So that was what we did to that working group, trying to make it a little bit more.
And I'm glad rather than a written report, just having them come back and present to the communities.
Yeah, that's what we did for all of them. We did the beginning, there's some definitions that about drug paraphernalia and what is considered drug paraphernalia and who can do a needle exchange program. And I will be honest, we did get, contradicting testimony on this as we all are used to in this building. The Department of Health wanted to not have this language because they wanted to maintain that it had to be an aid service organization, a substance abuse treatment provider, or a licensed healthcare provider.
Could you just, a section?
I'm sorry, page 2, at the top of page 2. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. They wanted to maintain the language so that only these organizations could do needle exchanges because they thought that those were the organizations that had the capacity to do that. We heard from other organizations that they said, we do have the capacity to do this. We would like to be able to do a needle exchange program to improve access to these programs, but we are not an age service organization, a substance abuse treatment provider, or a licensed healthcare provider. So we left the House version of the language in, which provides more flexibility for other organizations. They would all still have to go to Department of Health and be approved by Department of Health, so Department of Health could assess their capability of doing it. So we felt comfortable with leaving the House language in.
That's interesting. I'm just wondering what you think about medical waste and so forth. How are needles and how are they treated within the waste stream?
They're going in the trash and being burned or whatever.
No, they
There's a
go
separate-
There's a service that comes in, picks up the needles,
From
just
where?
like from these
From the trucks dropping
exchange
it.
programs and from hospitals. To the point of what do those programs do with them afterwards, I don't know, but they're not just thrown into the landfill.
I was just
don't
wondering
know.
the final disposition. I hate to use
Well,
that.
same thing with radiation material that the hospitals.
Oh, well, that's treated, especially
That's all
treated.
taken
That is
quite
controlled. I
So,
mean, people use needles at home, there's this, or lancets or all that, you're supposed to put them in like an empty milk jug and you mark the next and put them in the trash. They're going in the trash.
really like if you're diabetic.
Yeah, they're all going in insulin. So we're trying to protect the people who pick up the trash by having them in a plastic container so they don't get stabbed.
On section 3, medicated assisted treatment medications, that's instructive to the agency, but is that just a statement of what's happening? Or is that a new, because my impression is that we've been covering MAT for quite a while, either methadone or Formview and
And in the prisons too.
and Suboxone, yeah. So, could you tell me why is that
Yes.
language in there?
Yes, this was the first section we dealt with, so let me read it. This language and the language in section 4 about medication assisted treatment were, this is about prior authorization, and there was, what I remember from this is that this language in both section 3 and section 4, we had the Department of Health come in and say that this language was developed in collaboration with the parties in the House, and that the Department of Health signed off on it and they were okay with it. And we had,
Well, DIVA is the Medicaid.
and yes, and DIVA came, oh, yes, that's right, and DIVA came in and said this as well. So my recollection of this is once they all were like, we're all okay with this, we didn't do anything to this section because everyone felt comfortable with it. And it was mostly to sort of smooth the process for getting the medications for MAT for patients who are on Medicaid, and having reimbursement to the providers that provide it. So I'm sorry I don't have more information on that. What I do remember is that everybody was okay with it, and it was carefully crafted, and so we didn't touch it.
I'm just like, gee, I thought that's what was happening now, and so this is why it was need to be that instructive. But-
Yeah, apparently there have been some bumps in the road, and so they felt like this language was necessary to clarify. And there is one of these programs that I think there is $100,000 in the budget for. Do you remember which one it is, Stephanie? I think there's $100,000 in the budget for one of these.
Is that the one at UVM?
So we did the 100,000 at UVM for the mobile, we also did 100, and we did the math piece in the budget as well,
Yes, so
But there's no appropriation here.
in this bill.
there's
The
nothing
only
in this
reason we're
bill.
getting it was because there was an appropriation in the underlying. bill.
Correct. There were multiple appropriations. We took them all out knowing that there was something in the budget. And we just went with what you had all decided with the federal money. And so we defer to your decisions in that, and then just change the language to oral reports, and then mess with the working group a little to make it more.
Other questions, otherwise, the reason we're getting it is no appropriation now, we actually reflected it in the budget, so.
I have a question or comment.
Yeah,
if I could.
Senator Sears, yes.
Yeah, Senator Hardy, I like this bill. It's a very good one. I can remember working in Senate Judiciary on safe injection sites, and there was just tremendous pushback from the Department of Public Safety and others on it. And I suspect you had the same pushback in health and welfare. But the one question I have, is there any room in here for this group to look at the geographic disparities in services? For example, in Bennington County, there is no place where one can get methadone. People have to either travel to Rutland if they live in the Manchester area, or North Adams, Mass if they live in the Bennington area. So there's no local place for people to go to get methadone. And it's been a frustration for years. And they actually have buses that take people to North Adams to be able to get the methadone, but it's not easy for people, particularly if they're trying to hold down a job.
Yeah, Senator, I completely agree. We did have that discussion about the geographic sites, and for the working group on the safe injection sites, we did include on page 6 the program director from the Consortium on Substance Abuse, which I believe is in Southern Vermont, and also the program director for the Howard Center Safe Recovery Program, which is obviously in Burlington. So we were making sure that we had both those programs involved. I would say for the methadone.
Number 4 is also from different regions of the state, the League of Cities and Towns, so.
Yes,
we've also got
exactly.
that, but that's on the safe side.
That's on the safe injection sites, but for methadone, I think that would go more in maybe the mobile medication assisted treatment or one of the other reports. So we could certainly add language about, you know, that they need to report to us on the geographic, you know, diversity of geographic access. I'm totally fine with adding that language. In whichever report back to us you think is the most, we put multiple, they're all verbal reports, but.
Yeah, no, that would be helpful to have something in there. I suspect there's parts of the kingdom that are lacking of the of that as well.
Well,
Methadone.
actually, we have 2 hubs, I believe, in the Northeast Kingdom. I know we have one in St. John's, I believe that's one in Newport, and then, and we've got.
In the original hub version, there was supposed to be Rutland was the hub and Bennington was a spoke. And before we could even get up and running in Bennington, the Rutland, I think they had 500 slots and they were filled so quickly that there was no room for others.
So, Senator Sears, taking your suggestion about, you know, geographic equity, I think is sort of a equal access, you know, in all regions of the state. Is that something that you would want to go back and maybe you can offer an amendment, but it does seem like perhaps.
I'm sure
I would appreciate it if Health and Welfare would just put in an amendment on
We could
that.
certainly do a floor amendment, and I'm happy, I think we would all support that, and I'm happy to take the lead on that and make sure it happens. If you have a specific place you want it, Senator Sears, just let me know.
No, I think just as long as the task force is looking at the geographic issues.
Yeah, okay, will do. I will take care of that, and I can show it. I'll send it to you once we have it, so you can take a look at it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Want to be clear, though, the task force is around injection sites.
Correct.
Right.
Your concern is broader for all the treatment.
Well, I think in section 3.
Section 3, on the medication assisted treatment.
Yeah.
Okay, they do have a report back in section 4.
Oh,
So maybe it's in that.
section 4 is probably the appropriate place to ensure.
Okay.
So if Health and Welfare is willing to take the lead on that, any other suggestions while we've got you, Senator Sears?
No, and it's an excellent bill. You know, again, you know, that's my biggest problem. We actually had to get permission for people under the Department of Corrections who had been incarcerated to be able to go to North Adams, Mass to get the methadone treatment.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I will take care of that. Thank you.
Just to let you know, we have an email that Katie's been listening and she's working on the very amendment.
Perfect.
So.
Thank you, Katie.
So, and
Katie.
Then we will offer it at Health and Welfare.
Yeah, we will take care of that. No problem.
All right, that's wonderful. Now, but we are gonna let you go.
I know. Well, it's more
It's
fun in here than in finance right now, so.
We should still
It's
vote.
very fun in here. What's the matter?
Don't we still need to vote?
We do, yeah. But I need a motion. I need to have a motion. I don't think we had one, or did we?
I make a motion.
All right, Senator Nitka moves the bill. Favorable?
Yes.
And can I have a second?
I'll second.
And we will call the roll unless there's any further questions or comments.
Senator Ballard, Senator Baruch, yes. Senator Nitka,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Starr,
Yes.
Senator West.
Yes.
And Senator Kitchen.
Yes. That's probably Senator Westman's to report, because he does the Department of Health, and that seems to be the focus here. And, well,
Scooch behind.
So wait a minute, it
I did the last two.
okay.
My key ones.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now we're on to, H 279, and this is, change to the duties of the Department of Remote Health Access. So, this sounds like a real nail biter.
Oh, yes.
So let's get our relay.
This was exciting. So the top amendment is the amendment that the Health and Welfare Committee did, and coincidentally, this bill came to Health and Welfare with a provision about, and I don't even remember exactly which direction this went, but it was about merging or unmerging the small and the individual and small group markets. That is actually the conversation that's happening across the hall right now, and why I'm happy to be here. But this bill.
Because we don't know what CMS is gonna do.
Right, exactly.
So it's hard to know what we should do because we don't know what we're gonna be able to do.
Exactly. It's kind of a messy conversation. But this bill had a provision in it. We took it out because finance is dealing with it. So that's what the Health and Welfare Amendment is. But the rest of the bill, the reason I believe you guys got it.
What?
So we took the same provision out of the budget.
Yes, exactly.
For the very same reason.
Exactly. We're all on the same page. Now just give me a second.
It was getting rather circular.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous. But the reason I think this committee got the bill, besides that potentially, is that in section 1, this deals with Medicaid coverage for adult dental services. And the interesting thing about this was my very first bill to pass in the Senate. You all put it in the budget, but it was about expanding Medicaid coverage for dental services. So I think that was in 2019, back in the old days before the pandemic. But what ended up happening is that DEVA came back in this bill and asked to change the language. You'll see on page 1, paragraph 1. It said in the original language up to 2 visits per calendar year for preventative services. That became challenging because sometimes there needed to be 3 visits or, you know, some kind of procedure that they couldn't finish because they needed to come back for it. And then the person was stuck and didn't get coverage. So DEVA asked that we change it to just be preventive services, including prophylaxis and fluoride treatment. And
So the limitation comes by the nature of the service and everything.
Exactly. And DEVA said to us that in practice that will have not much impact, but for individual people, it may have a lot of impact so that they can go for a 3rd visit if they need it. And it was also administratively difficult to keep track of, oh, this person has had 2 visits, so they can't go again. So it was becoming a barrier.
It's by code.
Yes, exactly. It was difficult for them. So they requested this. And it's, at first I was a little nervous, but then when they explained it, I thought, okay, that seems reasonable.
So they could go and do these fluoride treatments. But then they'd still get their 2 dental.
Right, and it's all based on what is medically or dentally necessary.
It
you know,
wouldn't be
it's the same-
limited to 2 though, as long as it
No.
was one of these preventive services.
Right.
Correct, and they wouldn't have to keep
That'd
track
be-
anymore, and I think the
That'd be
administrative, the administrative burden was a lot, so.
Yeah, it's so much easier to, is this a coverable service and not
Right.
get into. That would be another artificial intelligence assignment, Senator Starr. You'd actually have to, you know, have the programming to track the number of
Smart
visits. Yeah.
machines could tell.
So, section 4, the amendment is to we strike that and leave it to the
Exactly.
store and clarify, get rid of the 2 visits and
Yeah, and I think it's getting rid of some reports that don't happen anymore. and some rulemaking that has already happened. So it's just sort of cleaning up the rest of it.
Right,
Yeah, I'll move it.
all right, so Senator Starr is, moved to, move the bill favorably, as it has been amended by Health and Welfare. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Mitchell. I just missed my plot so much. 223. 223, according to my phone here.
Go ahead and call the roll.
Yes, please call the roll.
Senator Val, Senator Faruq, yes. Senator Nick,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Stock,
Yes.
Senator Weston. Yes. Senator
Yes.
Suspense there.
No, I was onto the recorder, but I do Viva, so I guess I'm the recorder.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Always a pleasure. I will see you again.
Wait a minute, let me just see if we have any others.
The only outstanding one is still the child advocate bill, which I'm happy to come talk to you about more if you'd like.
Yeah, we just had raised some questions and we may take it back up again tomorrow. Senator Sears will be back up. Because we're kind of getting into some of the, I don't want to call it weeds, but some of those interrelationships between.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so there was a question about, I know the focus is on DCF, the child protection piece. We had, should we be including youth that are involved with the mental health system? Those were kind of hanging out there. And so yeah, I think we have a little more discussion on that bill.
That sounds great. And Senator Sears, if you have an amendment or language you want to chat about for that bill, I'm happy to do so. Just let me know.
Just concerned about the restraints language, because I do know there has to be a report on each one. I just don't know. I'd like to hear from DCF on how they can get that information to the child care advocate.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is whether or not.
Bill says 48 hours, and I mean, obviously a fatality should be immediately reported. You shouldn't even have 48 hours, but for restraints, I know one night a friend of mine got called in. He was on call and he went in because there had been 3 restraints and he was able to separate everybody and get everything under control. But when that happens, I mean, I don't know how long I know they have to file a report on each restraint, but I don't know how long it takes to get that information to DCF. I don't know all the details.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, we can definitely look at that. And if
Did you take testimony from Commissioner Brown?
We did.
On that reporting.
we took testimony from, no, up the chain from him.
What was the Secretary Samuelson or Todd Dallas?
I can't remember who. Let me look at my notes to remember who it was. But we did hear from Sean Brown, but I'm not sure if it was on that specific provision. We had changed the language on that because it read before that they had to, I think it was like immediately notify or something, and it was too much. So the 48 hours was the sort of changed language after we heard from the department. So I can look into that a little bit more, Senator Sears, and see. And if you want to hear directly from them, please do. But
I think we'll see where it goes tomorrow. That was one of my main concerns. I'm also concerned about the term investigation and how it all works with with places like Kern-Hatton.
Well, it seems like if they got the complaint, the best I can understand it is they would have some preliminary kind of, the term investigation can carry so many different things, sort of like evaluate the complaint. And if it appears to have merit, then make a referral to DCF that has the legal authority to investigate. I don't understand how somehow that fell through the cracks, because even though a facility is licensed by another agency like AOE, DCF still has that legal obligation and authority to investigate situations where children are, have been abused or at risk or whatever, so.
I think what happened, Kern Hatton, all of their employees are mandatory reporters. And I think what was happening there is they were deciding internally that something was not worthy of a report and not doing it. Since that time, the law has been made
Very clear.
very, very clear that a mandatory reporter, never mind what your superior said, you personally are the mandatory reporter and must report. And also, a lot of things have happened since that time in terms of the special investigation units, which do the interviews with kids. And in fact, they really don't want 5 people interviewing a child. They want to do it themselves properly and with the police involved. And they have special, there's special places that you take the child to, or people go there. These are all the special investigation units, which have their own place with kid-friendly accommodations, so that they can do an investigation that is proper and can lead to not only helping the child, but getting a conviction. So
Well, and
a lot has
they
changed.
have the proficiency.
Part of the Brooke Bennett bill, if you remember, Senator Nitka, that we worked on.
Oh, in terms of the mandatory, making it clear on that.
Well, also the SIUs to establish one in
Right.
Yeah,
every district.
oh, yeah,
And we fund them.
and we do fund the SIUs.
Yeah.
But again, I those are a couple of the concerns, but that is a major one, but it's also, given 19,000 reports a year of child abuse, how, at what point does this group get involved, or this position that, with just 2 people, at what point do they get involved? I mean, it's a mammoth thing. And I'm sure you do too, Senator Hardy. I get complaints from parents or grandparents or whatever, frequently about DCF and how they treat their kids. So I will contact DCF, I get both sides of the story, and it's surprising how different the 2 sides are.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think we all get those calls. Well, I will look at the language and see if I have any suggestions, and I'm happy to come back and chat again tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Okay, well, solve the
They may have decided with
markets, merge or unmerge. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
Committee of conferences meeting, what, at 3?
3 o'clock.
So, we could, I don't know whether Chris Bray could come in on petroleum cleanup.
And he also has 606, which is community resilience.
Yeah, and we have that because it has quite a bit of work, and the agency said they needed staff, and the House said, too bad. They gave them no staff, and I gather you're recommending
No.
that they don't get any staff. Okay, so why don't we see if Senator Bray comes in?
Excuse me, sir.
Those are the 3 that we got today.
And we will be staying live while I pop out.
So is it 153?
Yeah.
Yes. Just think, we're getting close to the end.
Yeah, feels that way.
Doesn't it? It does. Let's see. When is May 1st? Is that this week? Is that Friday?
Sunday.
Next Saturday, it's Saturday or Sunday.
Oh, my goodness.
It's over the weekend.
We haven't had one really nice spring day. It doesn't seem
Just
like.
Saturday was pretty, really good at home. Like Saturday.
Yeah, but
It's cold, right?
it was.
On Saturday,
Yes, on Saturday.
on the dark, not the kingdom.
The weekend was pretty good.
Sun was shining.
Yeah.
Heck, we had sleep just a little while,
Never got
that
to
hail, a little hailstorm.
Had hail a little while ago, something.
Yeah, a little bit of hail. It didn't last long, but I looked outside and I got the
members of.
hail coming down.
Wow.
All right.
Big critique of this
This is an easy one. I didn't make any changes.
So they could, if you want, letter on it.
Thank you very much.
Your board,
That's the
All
one
bills.
thing we're adding in the,
All
the
bills.
issue controller eligible for.
One page.
well, we haven't passed the bill out, so we can talk about it.
Nice.
What kind of trauma? Physical, head trauma? I mean, if you hit a tree,
That's
your
trauma.
body has experienced trauma.
That's the idea, I think it's the same as an EMS.
Yeah. Oh, it's just allowing them to get 10%.
What bill is this?
This is H5 of 482, and it's the Petroleum Cleanup Fund. And what it's doing is moving from a maximum of 6 to 10% of annual receipts for annual disbursement. So it's raising the level of disbursement. Is this the Lust? Was this originally Lust? Leaking underground storage tanks?
Well, it is. It started out for gas stations and things like that. Yeah, it is leaking underground. stations.
Uh-huh.
When it goes onto someone else's property.
Oh, shadowing.
Almost, yeah, not your own. Well, I guess it could be, I don't know if it can be your own on your own house. I think it has to go on somebody else's property.
I don't know.
It's gotta go on somebody else's
Oh,
property.
I don't know, this
So you're
doesn't-
paying it out, it's in the gas.
I know.
You pay for gasoline.
It's just increasing the annual disbursement and with the cost of everything, I'm sure.
There's usually a fair amount of money in the fund, although I think somebody else borrows from it.
Well, a big company, they can borrow from us if they want.
Well, I think somebody not so closely related. I mean, it's meant to start it out to help.
Yeah,
It's
they
for the
don't
bad
pay the
deal.
bill.
That's right, yeah. Get these papers together.
We had a gas station.
Oh, it's for
owner.
gas stations.
Yeah, but he didn't have anything for anybody to go after, and they paid the whole bill.
That happens, and remember what's it, that's petroleum cleanup. I was thinking of the Rutland dry cleaning establishment, remember that?
One in Barry or Williams.
Yeah. Think what they use for dry cleaning.
They use petroleum cleanup fund?
No, it just triggered the thought about that site in
Yeah.
Rutland.
How much is in the fund now, Stephanie? Do you know?
I can tell you what it was at the end of last year. This moment, I don't think I know.
It's very expensive cleanups, of course.
Okay, all right, particularly because you have to dig up the soil and everything. Can't be. And a lot of those underground tanks have leaked over the years.
After that, on our honeymoon, we stopped at a gas station in Stratton to get gas. And the guy, of course, didn't know this was paid, but he had water leak into his gas tanks. So within about half an hour, everybody that had gotten gas there, the trucks, the town truck, everything quit. And everybody's, the only guy around, everybody's calling, my car broke down, town truck, something wrong with the truck. Finally, the guy, everybody back to the gas station, people.
Did you put dry gas in? Did that take care of it?
He had to, we had a roll train to take the tank off and empty it out.
Oh,
But yeah, dry gas, he had just a tiny bit would help, but this was imagine a town truck.
so it's a welcome,
Alex, the fund balance at the end of June last year was $8.2 million.
$8.2 million.
In the petroleum gas.
Wow. Down there, so you can never get out of the filling station there.
Thank you.
All for a while.
so we have Senator Bright, although I'm wondering as we reduce the amount of fuel and move to EVs, the funding for this cleanup fund is going to shrink, would it not?
Probably,
I would think.
it's because it's off per gallon, I believe. Should be kilowatt use, right? Well,
But they won't be leaking petroleum. So we have H 482, and it's a petroleum cleanup fund, and it looks like it's pretty straightforward. It's just increasing the threshold or standard not to exceed 6 to 10%. And it's probably in response to the cost of some of these field costs and administrative costs. So you want to just.
Okay, also for the record, Senator Stray, I'm reporting on page 482, which is probably in the running for one of the briefest bills of the
We
year.
love it, we love it.
And so the Petroleum Cleanup Fund committee knows, it receives funds in two ways. There's an assessment on category 1 tanks, fuel tanks at stations, and those run from a low of $100 to a high of $1,000, depending on their construction and various details. And then it's also a tax on 1 cent a gallon.
it must be breaking in the money now, or, it's on the per gallon.
It's on gallons.
Gallons.
So the more you're moving into EV, my only point is it's gonna have a concurrent, just like it's having an impact on the T fund.
I think will apply.
Yeah.
So I think in part, the receipts have decreased. And I know that heating fuel sales tend to drop. I mean, the trend line is down. It fluctuates because of how cold the winter is, but I think most of what might be driving the rate down is the loss of heating fuel sales over time. And then because that's a relatively fixed income stream or declining, and then cost of administration, salaries, everything goes up. So
Yeah, the annual receipts are down and costs are up, and so you've got to adjust your percentage accordingly.
while the overhead was, it was too little to run the program. We did hear from two dealers and everyone supported it. It's a very modest cost for the benefits delivered. It's almost like insurance. You're like, if you're a filling station and you have a leak, but you're as part of the program, the state chips in a big way in terms of helping clean up, mitigate soil removal, something incredibly expensive. There's strong support for the program, and so we follow the lead of
And your committee vote was 5-0.
5-0.
Any questions, committee, on this? Seems pretty straightforward. If not, a motion to move the bill favorably. Senator Yanko. I need a second, Senator Starr.
Senator Ballin. Senator Cruz, yes. Senator Nitka.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes. Now, while we have you in here, Senator Gray, another bill that was just signed is H 606. And I know that there was a fiscal note that was done and that the agency had testified that in order to do this work, they would need additional staff. That the House declined to provide that, and gather you are concurring with the House that this is work that they should do with existing staff as part of their existing programmatic responsibility, I guess.
I always, in committee over and over again, we say if we're gonna ask any operating area to take on any kind of duty that they should tell us if they need funds to do that work. We don't just expect them to stretch thinner ERP year. So, now this bill's advancing, if the agency wants to argue their case, again, directly to appropriations committee, but I don't know if you want me to, well, I'm not really here to, argue against additional funding, but at the time, the testimony you've heard, we concluded that it.
So what would be the implication of saying just do this work with, within your, existing resources? Like, I'm sure it's, I was laughing about the days of Howard Dean, you'd say you needed 12 positions and you would say 2 or none. So sometimes it's not uncommon that we would have a piece of work that we would want to have done as part of the agency's normal course of doing business. And I gather you concluded that that one's possible with this bill that sets forth the goal in the conservation plan.
And in part because they already do a lot of conservation work,
And they do a lot of planning and mapping and.
Right. People tend to think of them as regulators, but they already have a very active conservation program. So, which might beg the question, well, why do we have such a bill? And it's that what we haven't done is lay out goals. We have a Vermont conservation design, and which is a great piece of conservation work that they've done already. I mean, it's like the foundation that a lot of things can be built off of. This says, okay, so let's go from just studying more generally to maybe goals, and consistent with the federal program of 30% conserved land by.
Is that federal?
Yeah, I think it came, I believe it was, I'd have to double check whether it was issued as an executive order or you put in statute, but I believe it's by executive order. And so then it was, and then aim further for 50% by 2050. And so I'm looking at page 5 where all the work starts really, there's page 4, there's some definitions of what kinds of conservation we're talking about. They're more specific and updated. But on 5, we start to lay out how we work. And it's also the plan, the goals include all state, federal, municipal, private land. So it's all lands in the state. It's not a state-only obligation or anything. The estimates are that we're currently at somewhere around 26%. So
We're at now 26%, is that what you said?
right.
And then at 2050 is
No, but what are we at now?
26%.
So I believe now we're at 26.
But, and that includes forest land, parks, land,
But, and the other thing, so I think you might think, well, wait, Vermont is already 76% forest, why aren't we far above? So this is talking about permanent conservation.
I was gonna say
So
that.
that's the difference. Yes, we have much more green space already, but what we haven't done is necessarily to conserve it. And this is, okay, so let's put ourselves in a path to conserve more land over time.
And there's some of us who don't choose to conserve it officially, but spiritually and
Right.
morally and ethically.
Right.
The land is as protected as it might be otherwise, and that doesn't count toward the goal.
Well, so there is part of what so there's lays out these high level goals, and it asks the commissioner, the secretary to develop a plan.
Did you count a current use enrolled?
No.
That's not permanently conserved because you can withdraw it, so that doesn't.
Current use.
Current use,
Yeah, but if you do, it's very
expensive to withdraw. Yeah, but I'm just saying that conserved land, I mean, through current use, and because of the penalty around withdrawal, but that doesn't count as under permanently conserved, even though there's thousands.
if you sell your development rights, then it's
Yeah, would be.
permanently conserved.
How many acres do we have in current use?
Knowledge,
One.
And what
Yeah.
percentage would that be? In other words, if we're looking at 26%, then meet the definition of permanently conserved. And if we were to look at, in addition to that 26%, what percentage would be enrolled in current use? It would be quite interesting to
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
how that
Gus,
looks relative to the
Gus
goal.
has that in it. It's amazing how much it is.
About 6 million acres. Current use is at 200, so there we go, that's a third right there, just current use.
What happens is that they can't make it or they change generations. And the old folks still have to have money to live on. So then they sell the development rights, so dad and mom can retire. And then it's permanently.
Yeah, yeah.
And those big farms, a lot of them are gone.
Are
Yeah.
permanently conserved that way,
It's the only thing they can do is
to keep them in the, keep them.
keep them in agriculture and.
So in this, it was sent to us because of the fact that we were giving it work and saying there was no resources to go with it. We don't have any appropriation here. The House chose in spite of the testimony, and you probably took testimony from A&R as well.
Yeah.
And did they make the same request for resources?
I'm looking at some of my notes from, I would have to double check.
Must not have been a compelling argument because you didn't change anything here.
No, well, because actually the thrust of my notes from what A&R asked about was language changes related to the notion of how we define permanent conservation.
I can't remember them coming in and talking about something.
We had emails from the secretary, for instance. And one of the concerns was that the toolkit that's available to conserve property, that by focusing on permanent conservation, that we were excluding other activities that actually keep land open. For instance, that if you're in current use, but you haven't conserved yet, the land is still doing what you would hope it would be. We'd be using the land the way you would hope. So we ended up having a conversation about formal permanent conservation, which we ended up calling big capital C and lowercase c, where people are in things like current use. And that there is really, because land is such a personal thing, that someone may be in current use for many years before they finally get to the point where they say, now I'd like to permanently do. And so it was, some parcels roll over. At any rate, we left that thrust on that the goal should be around permanent conservation so that we don't start counting things that converge. But the real work is a plan that comes back, and it includes assessments of all existing programs that are used to meet permanent conservation, as well as looking at funding recommendations and pre-public meetings as in the course of developing that plan.
So we don't have an appropriation here. I don't gather that that's being recommended. So I'm going to have you ask your question, Alice, otherwise we can move the bill.
Well, I want to know what, on page 5, just the next paragraph, the percentage reached by the conservation category shall be guided by the conservation targets within Vermont conservation design. What is Vermont conservation design? I'm not familiar with it.
Sure, it's so the state, actually, we have Vermont conservation design. It's still a living project and document. It's not just a one-shot deal. So it includes extensive mapping, looking at resources all around the state, looking at them for their.
Who maintains it at A&R?
A&R.
Okay.
And then it laid out goals, for instance, that I mean, that's why one of the other companion bills this year relates to creating an old forest land category.
Yeah.
Where in Vermont Conservation Design, for instance, it says we should, in terms of the mix of sort of a healthy portfolio of resource types, we should have about 9% old forest. We already have about 1%. And so the bill is oriented to finding ways to help some of the less than old go into a status where they are maintained in such a way as they eventually grow into older forests.
See, those people, that part of that isn't really fair. Because if I own the woods, the forest, and put it in the plan,
Yeah.
I have to have a forester go in there and maintain
Are you talking
that.
about current use or the old growth?
So they're still gonna be in current use after they put it in this old growth.
That's a different bill though.
Yeah, that's the next one coming.
Oh, that's a different bill though.
Yeah, it is.
This doesn't allow the old growth stuff.
No, this is about conserving different.
This is just a report.
Land in.
Senator Sears has something.
Yes, Senator Sears.
Conservation.
Just wanted to comment that probably the quality of the report will depend upon whether or not the agency really wants to provide it. If they thought they needed funding, you may not get the report that you hope. It's, it sounds like lofty goals, but, this is an agency that has been stricken by lower, no increase in fees that support parts of the agency. And I think it just continually, we ask more. So, I mean, I don't have an objection to the report, but I do think it's unfortunate that if the agency really felt they needed money to do this report, that it wasn't in the bill.
Can't be
Well,
We didn't get the funding.
I guess if they didn't make a compelling argument to our Senate committee, there are many times things that are associated work are very complementary to what you're doing. There's a lot of mapping, there's a lot of inventory already underway. So in the absence of saying, if you don't give us staff, we're not going to be, this is going to jeopardize our work here, which did not happen. I guess we may find that they'll come back and say, this is as much as we could do. And if we want to, in order to do the, whatever's desired here, we're going to need the staff. So at this point, we have a bill with an assignment and no specific request to say it can be accommodated within the existing resources. So we have a motion by Senator Westman to move the bill.
Madam Chair, so if just, because this is exactly on point, so if I may, just to read from the memo to the committee from Secretary Moore. She said, as I noted yesterday, even if the committee was to, she were talking about some changes, I continue to have significant concerns about the capacity of the agency to undertake what will be a substantial effort, given the challenges we're experiencing around filling big positions and all the other demands on staff time. So it wasn't that it didn't come up at all, but there was no specific request to make an appropriation to support the work.
Well, I think what also is being reflected is oftentimes we've got an awful lot of positions that have been authorized and they're vacant. And I think
So,
that's another compounding issue.
so I want to be respectful of what and accurate about what the agency said. It never led to a funding request.
Well, I can see if you're running a significant vacancy, but it's not that because the positions aren't there, it's a matter of being able to recruit and hire individuals.
What's the bill we voted out today?
697, the use
What?
value. Are you talking about use value?
Yeah,
That was 697.
yes, that's the bill that you were.
The old road. Well, I have to, sorry to rush, but we are gonna have the conference committee here in about 2 minutes.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Senator Westman, seconded by Senator Ruth to move the bill.
Current use has got 2.4 million, 1/3 of the state.
Yeah,
That was that again?
It's 2.4 million in current use.
yeah, that's what Senator Gray out, 6 million. So,
Yeah.
2.4 million.
2.4.
Okay, have a-
so,
Thank you.
so do you want to call the roll, please?
Senator Ballard, Senator Ruth, yes. Senator Nika,
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes, reluctantly.
Sorry.
Yes.
Senator West,
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes. And Alice, your natural resources.
That's 2 for you, Alice. So,
Yeah, I've got the last one.
Yeah, well. Okay, thank you very much. And those are the two that we're hoping to get done. 606 and petroleum cleanup. So we're down to one more today. So at this